Hey guys, in today's video, I want to talk about Tsitsipas, who surprised a lot of people by winning the ATP 500 title in Dubai. And Tsitsipas has been struggling for about 10 months or so, losing a lot of matches that he shouldn't be losing, going out early in a lot of tournaments, especially the important ones. But this week, he found his form. And many people noticed that he was playing with a blacked out racket that looked very similar to this racket. Maybe it is this racket. We're going to talk about that later in the video. So stay tuned. But what frustrates me about Tsitsipas is all the criticism that he receives. He gets a lot of hate, especially regarding his backhand. And I think it's very undeserved. It's brutal in the comments section regarding Tsitsipas. And after he lost to Medjedovic, a match that I covered in a video last week, where Medjedovic was able to beat him after getting hurt, basically on one leg. Tsitsipas was drawn to play Sonego in the first round of Dubai, and of course people were predicting that Sonego was going to take him out, but Stefanos played well. He beat Sonego 7-6, 6-4. Then in the second round, he won a tough match against Kachanov 6-4 in the third. He then took out Berrettini 6-4 in the third. And then he really turned on the heat and took out Greek Sport 4-4. And in the final, he beat Aliasim 3-3. And in the semifinal and the final, Stefanos played some of the best tennis that we've seen in a long time. The last time I saw Stefanos playing at this level was on clay in 2024. Now, the unfair thing regarding Tsitsipas is that last week after he lost to Medjedovic, he was getting so much hate, and this week he's being praised. So the criticism that these players are facing on social media is absolutely brutal and it's undeserved because Stefanos is a phenomenal player who has achieved a lot throughout his career. He won the ATP World Tour Finals. Dubai happens to be his 12th title. He's won Master Series tournaments. And after I made the video where he lost to Medjedovic in Doha last week, people were asking me in the DMs, what's wrong with Tsitsipas? And throughout the last 10 months or so, I've had conversations with some people about the Tsitsipas situation. What is going on with his game? It is true that the backhand is a problem. Now, a year ago, I made a video after Tsitsipas won the tournament in Monte Carlo, and I said that Tsitsipas has a good backhand. He has a technically sound backhand. I had analyzed it in depth, and I continue to analyze it. If you look at the shot quality for backhands in 2024, the only one-handed player in the top 10 is Grigor Dimitrov. So Grigor Dimitrov has the best one-handed backhand in the world. And the Tsitsipas one-hander is not quite at that level. And I'm going to make a separate video where I in-depth analyze the Tsitsipas backhand. He does have some stylistic differences compared to Dimitrov that make his one-handed backhand a tad more vulnerable. But I want to stress one point. The fact that a player has a one-handed backhand in today's game is a disadvantage. It was even a disadvantage for some of the greatest backhands in the tennis history, Wawrinka, Dominic Thiem, Richard Gasquet, Roger Federer, who had to face Nadal with that heavy left-handed forehand topspin. There was not much that they could do. Federer, of course, towards the end of his career, started hitting his backhand a lot better. But fact is that a one-handed backhand is tough in today's game. If the ball is being hit very heavy to that side, there is a disadvantage if somebody has a one-hander compared to a two-hander. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So the criticism is absolutely insane, where people say that Tsitsipas has a horrible one-handed backhand is 100% not true. I made a post on Instagram where I asked people to rate the Tsitsipas backhand, whether it's elite, whether it's above tour average, whether it's tour average or whether it's below tour average. And a lot of people said that it's below tour average, and that's absolutely not true. Tsitsipas, especially when he plays on clay, is possibly in the top 3 one-handed backhands in the world. Now, I know that there are not that many, but Tsitsipas, especially on clay, has an excellent one-handed backhand. But yes, if you take a look at the complete package, the one-handed backhand is the big weakness in the Tsitsipas game. His dad said that when he was developing his game that focused very heavily on the forehand and then wanted to make it into a very strong weapon, which they did. Stefanos has one of the best 1-2 punches in the game. He's got an excellent serve and he's got one of the best forehands in the world. And while the one-handed backhand is not as bad as people make it out to be, it is his weakest shot, no doubt about it. And also the fact that it's one-handed and the fact that it's not quite as good as some of the other players on tour, for example, Dimitrov, you put all that together and players are able to exploit that side. But it doesn't mean that Tsitsipas is not able to hit good backhands, even at the highest of the high levels. He absolutely is. And it's not only the fact that he can hit good backhands on clay and not on any other surface. He's proven himself that he can play extremely well on hard courts. Now, the racket that Tsitsipas used this week helped him a lot.
In the last couple of months, there have been some changes on the ATP Tour, and a lot of players were vocal about it. There were a few players inside the top 10 that spoke about it, how balls and courts have become slower and slower. And I'm just trying to adapt to that and use that more into my benefit, because I felt like one of the things that I wasn't having a great time with was these slow conditions that I was being faced with in the last couple of months. So I'm trying to perhaps change that feeling of discomfort that I've been feeling lately.
There is a trend on the ATP Tour that players are going more and more to power rackets. I'm also seeing this trend on the WTA Tour. I think the days of the Wilson Pro Staff and the Head Prestige are coming to an end. And why is that? Because the conditions are being slowed down a lot. Last week, when I discussed the Wilson Shift and Clash rackets, I talked about Medvedev going to a different Technifiber mid-match because he wanted more power. Players are forced to go to more powerful rackets and more powerful string setups because the balls are so dead. And Tsitsipas this week played a lot better. He hit his backhand a lot better because he is not playing with the racket I'm holding here. This is the Diadem Axis 98. This is a phenomenal racket. You can click on the link in my description and get 15% off. He was using something that's very similar to the Diadem Axis, which is the Babolat Pure Aero 98 with a 16 by 20 string pattern. And that particular racket is a power racket, no doubt about it. But also the way the frame is designed, very similar to this Axis right here. It's a little bit thinner on the sides and it's easier to make topspin. So if you look at the shot quality on the Tsitsipas backhand in the semifinal match against Griekspoor, it was 9.7 and the tour average is 7.1. So Stefanos was hitting incredible backhands in that semifinal match against Griekspoor, in the final against Aliassim, and pretty much through the entirety of the week, his one-handed backhand was working really well. And remember, Dubai is not held on clay. Dubai is a hard court tournament. So this was a great move by Stefanos, and I'm happy that he's doing well. He is a player that's very important for the game. Not only does he have a one-handed backhand, but to me, he reminds me a little bit of Bjorn Borg, the way he looks, and I think he is a phenomenal addition to the players that are at the top of the game. We want to see Tsitsipas compete with the likes of Sinner and Alcaraz for big titles. I do think that Tsitsipas is one of the best clay court players in the world. He's proven that last year in 2024. That's why I didn't criticize him at all for losing to Medvedev last week in Doha. I knew that he was going to turn it around, at least throughout the clay court swing, but he found his form even prior to the clay court swing. So I know the quality of Tsitsipas, and I wouldn't disrespect him by start speculating on how his career is over, because I know that not long ago, 2024, he won a Masters 1000 in Monte Carlo on clay, where he beat Sinner. Of course, that match, Sinner probably would have won if that call would have went the correct way, but nevertheless, Tsitsipas won that title. The next week, he was in the final again of Barcelona, where he lost to Ruud, and he made it to the quarterfinals of the French Open, where he lost to Alcaraz. So those results didn't happen 5 years ago. That was only last year. So for me, it was only a matter of time until Tsitsipas found this form, and he did, and I think the racket helped him a lot. Now he can build on this confidence and possibly make some good results in the absence of Sinner all the way up to Rome and get his ranking back up. And I think it's going to be fun to see whether Tsitsipas can make it back to the very top of the game.